The Box Seat, brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Hi everyone, welcome to this edition of The Box Seat. We greet you with the sad news that Murray Edmonds has passed away late in the afternoon, early evening at his home in Duck Pond Road, Motukarara. Murray was aged just 62. He's left an indelible mark on the code of harness racing. Started out his career, pretty sure he started with Mike DeFilippi. In fact, he drove his first winner for Mike back in 1979. Able Royale at Methven, so on a grass track, which is quite appropriate. And about 6 or 7 years later, Idle Thoughts was a winner for him at Blenheim. He used to love a trip up to the Nelson Blenheim circuit. In fact, on more than one occasion, he passed on to me that it was the making of many a horse, taking them up to Nelson. And his colours, of course, the white with the red sash and the yellow sleeves have been pretty fondly sought after by the punters over the years. Often his horses pay some nice money. Probably his greatest association's been with the Trotters. He's trained about 370 odd winners, but almost 2/3 of those have been in the Trotting Gate. And his best success was in the Trotting Gate as well, with horses like Ronnie Coote and Flip Flop winning Sale Series races. His biggest win probably with Breton Abbey, who won a Hambletonian on the way to winning a Northern Trotting Derby. Best pacer, probably Anvil Ladd, who won a Forbury 4-year-old championship. Come off 10 metres and was actually driven by his former boss in Mike DeFilippi that day. To Kelly, to Scott, to Lisa, to the extended Edmonds family, and it is a big family. We know this because we got an opportunity less than 2 weeks ago for the Kelly and Murray Edmonds race night to acknowledge his contribution to the sport and just spend a little bit of time with him. It's come pretty suddenly to have happened within the last 2 weeks. His last training success was this one with Get Back in the Bogue colours, driven by John Dunn, who of course wife Jenna, one of Murray's nieces. Coming back at the head of the field and saluting Murray was John Dunn, and it was a pretty special moment. And of course on the Kelly and Murray Edmonds night, they went very close with watching our coin. Michael, as I bring you in, a huge part of Canterbury harness racing, huge part of Motukarara. He was often referred to as Motukarara Murray, and I was lucky enough to have my first ever racehorse with him. He charged about $15 a day back then, Michael, and I reckon he didn't put his fees up much after that. He was all about the owner and the horse, and he'll be sadly missed for sure.
Yeah, a tremendously sad way to start the show this week, but we wanted to start it to pay respect to Murray's mark in the harness racing industry. Obviously it's sad. The thing that shocked me today when I found out about Murray's passing was he was only 62. As a youngster growing up in Greymouth, where guys like Murray and Colin and Mike would come across and drive horses, Murray's name has been part of my entire adult life in harness racing, and even before that when I was a teenager. So that's the mark he's made on people like myself. So particularly to people in the Canterbury region, but of course Murray would have friends in harness racing right around New Zealand and Australia. We're feeling for you today. Such a special occasion that they were able to have that night at Addington just a week and a half ago, Greg, where Murray and the entire family could feel that love from the entire industry. So I know words don't fill the gap of someone passing, Greg, as someone who's lost their own father, but what I do know is that lots of people in the harness racing industry will get around the Edmonds family, and as you said, the extended family, and lots of people will have fond memories of those associations and of those colours, like I do from when Murray made an occasional trip to Alexandra Park. So obviously our condolences are with the family, and I'm sure, Greg, it'll be a big funeral for Murray at some stage, because a lot of people in harness racing will want to pay their respects.
Yeah, absolutely they will, Michael, and yeah, he's been taken way too soon at just the age of 62. One thing I do know, he would say, get on with it. Let's keep this game going. He loved the sport of harness racing. So on this show tonight, we will acknowledge not only him, but dedicate the show to the passing of Murray Edmonds. The road to the IRT New Zealand Cup did continue at Addington Raceway last week. This was an automatic entry race, of course, and let's go and have a look at the winning performance here of BD Joe. Winning the Lamb and Haywood Canterbury Classic in front for Benjamin Butcher. That's self-assured to his outside, spank him to his inside, and he's a sport getting through for Colin De Philippi late. We'll hear post-race from the winning driver, Benjamin Butcher.
And they've handed him the classic. BD Joe a half a length on Spank him, self-assured for third. Fourth across, he's a sport. South Coast Arden really good late.
He's really improved, this guy, particularly in the manners department, because you took him off the unruly tonight, and, well, the confidence levels about him stepping away, I know, were pretty high with you.
Yeah, I never really worried too much about it. You know, up north, he always stepped away in. Yeah, and you know, we had that one miss away at the trials and that, but like so far, he's been perfect.
Tell us about in the run, because look, the sectionals you were getting, and when he's rolling like that, he's a far more rounded horse these days. He doesn't have to lead, as we saw his speed earlier in the campaign, but gee, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with in these races, isn't he?
I like to hope so. Yeah. But no, it'll be very good, you know. And he's always been good in front, and like you say, you get easy sectionals, it always makes it hard for the ones out the back to pick you up. So, yeah.
You've emulated your father by winning this race. I think he won it back in 2006 with Win For You. So your name in the book, and another Butcher in a feature race at Addington Raceway. That sits pretty nicely.
Oh, it's very nice. And funny enough, you say that, he actually told me yesterday that he won the race. He was looking up all the results.
Well, you got the win, of course, on Kango last week. So it's been a good couple of weeks in these types of races for you. Congratulations to you, Benjamin.
Thanks very much.
Yes, 6 winners of this race, Michael, have gone on to win the IRT New Zealand Cup in the last 12 or 13 years. So it is a key lead-up. Give me your take out of the race, because once he got the lead in 3:15, that's like going to the trials for a horse like him. But there were some excellent runs just in behind.
Yeah, a lot to unpack. First of all, on the winner, to Steve and Amanda Telfer. Smart move last year. At the back end of the season, they could have gone to the race. They could have put him in a lot of races, Greg, where he probably couldn't win. And Steve did what's really hard for a trainer who's still trying to win premierships and trying to make his footprint at Group 1 level. As he said, no, we'll calm down. And that's really impressive. Not unlike his former boss, Barry Purdon, who missed a whole bunch of good races with Holmes DG when he was 4, including the New Zealand Cup. And they think long term, and that's why Steve is going to be a very good trainer alongside Amanda. So those dividends are coming through from that. They gave the horse a proper spell and brought him up early, and he looks fantastic. So he's obviously a factor heading forward. He may go to a race at Addington next Friday week if it gets off the ground, or he could head straight to Ashburton, or both of those things. Second was fine. Spankin was good, and he's clearly going to improve. He's an older horse now. Self-assured sitting parked, which isn't his go. Very good in third. So total pass marks for those horses. He's a sport, is learning to be an open class horse. No harm in his run. And that would make me think he's worth taking to a New Zealand Cup, because it's not going to be enormously more difficult than that, the New Zealand Cup. Most of the favourites were there. And South Coast Arden was really good. I think after the back end of last campaign, which I'm tempted to call last season, but it wasn't last season, I think a lot of people were like, well, where's South Coast Arden at? And when he hit the line, I think it was the most visually appealing thing in the race. It was the first thing your eye went to. So that was a good sort of cup step for those 5 horses. Hard to believe anything behind them is going to be a factor in the cup, with the caveat that Cranbourne had no overcheck on. I think the overcheck will go back on this week, and he will step away, hopefully better at Methven. So he's the one horse I'm willing to say that run means nothing to me. I'm not discounting him on that performance. Let's see how he steps away if in fact he heads to Methven on Sunday, Greg. So your top 5, really good, but BD Joe there paying dividends to the connections for decisions made 6 months ago.
Yeah, and you've got to give a great acknowledgement too to Jill Stockman, because these syndicates, this is why she put these together for horses like this. Ultra Wise Guy, they've now got 2 guaranteed for the IRT New Zealand Cup. So, yeah, that has a big part to play too. I thought not bad, and behind the McAndrew Aviator, he's gone 2 good races. And still the show was a little bit unlucky and was placed in the Methven Cup. But you mentioned...
I think the tough one for people there, Greg, is with those horses, do you still go to a New Zealand Cup? Because you and I grew up on New Zealand Cups. And you say, I'd love to have a horse in the Cup. Or do you say to yourself, I go Kaikoura Cup and I target that as my big grand final. I target the races at the New Zealand Cup meeting that Krug won last year, which we still call the Junior Free-for-All. Do I target those or do I go? And it's always a question I've always wondered. If you had a horse who's good enough-ish, and I've had a couple of horses who were good enough-ish for the Jewels, but they couldn't win, or good enough-ish for a Breeders' Crown, but they couldn't win. And my natural instinct is to go to the race, but you say to yourself, would you go to a $30,000 or $40,000 race if that's what you actually can win? So it's a really interesting question for the connections of those horses. I think because we're all harness racing people, Greg, most people will go. But it's interesting because this year's Cup, unlike last year or the year before, particularly if Copy That and Rock and Roll do come back from Victoria, it's a deep Cup, Greg.
Yep.
And probably in my mind, the horses from 10 to 15 can't win. And if you're in the ownership of those 10 to 15 horses, it's going to be really interesting to see what people want to do with it. But my natural inclination to think is, Greg, that most people want a Cup runner and therefore they will go and enjoy the experience. And I totally understand that because I've done the same thing myself at top level races with horses I probably thought couldn't win.
All right, you mentioned before the flashing red light was clearly on the helmet of Brent Mangos. Took the opportunity to go out, catch up with him where he's based at the All-Stars team and find out what he thought of the run and how things are progressing for South Coast Arden. Well, in terms of a first up run, you couldn't be more happy.
Oh no, it was good, Greg. You know, he was a wee bit fidgety at the start, which I did anticipate happened the first couple of starts, but hopefully he'll settle down as far in that respect. But no, great run. He got home the last 100 very, very good and hit the line good.
Preparation-wise, different for the horse, different for you as well, because this time last year you weren't able to be here.
Yeah, no, that's right. So it's great to be a part of it now again with the horse. And look, he does seem to thrive since when he's down in this environment. So look, and he has done that in the last fortnight. I thought got a hell of a lot better. His coat's come good and he's settled in really well. So.
Brent, he looks like he's come through the race well. Tell us how you felt about that and the work he did today. What did you put him through?
He just went quietly today, just a mile and a half today, and tomorrow he'll do the straight track work, which I do think he likes. Obviously, he did that last year, and well, the 2 prior times he's come, he does seem to like that straight track. He's a big horse, and yeah, it saves him going around too many bends, doesn't it? So that type of work I think helps him as well, Greg. So he'll do the straight track tomorrow and probably Friday and going into Sunday.
Yep. Methven, something a bit different. He's eaten plenty of grass, but he's never raced on it.
No, he hasn't. But he's a sort of big, bold pacer, so I'm not thinking that'll be a problem. Yeah, hopefully, but I don't think it will. I think he'll just adapt to that pretty good.
You were saying to me the other night, there's sort of 10 days between races, so you get to Ashburton, and I suppose from there you can decide whether he needs a cup trial or not.
Yeah, that's right, depending on what type of run, because Ashburton can be a bit taxing on them, I think. So, yeah, I'll just weigh that up after Ashburton, and if he needs one, well, it's going to be there.
Brent, the back end of his campaign last time, and to be fair to him, there were 13 or 14 runs and it was his first year against the absolute big bangers. Do you think he just came to the end of it?
Oh, without a doubt. You know, like you've got your knockers in any part of the industry, haven't you? But he got them prior because I think his form tapered off, and the horse wasn't going any good. You know, like he did strike a virus 3/4 of the way through the year. Didn't think he really picked up at all after that. So, yeah, and he was racing top company horses, you know. So, and as you just said, Greg, it was his first year in that grade, you know. So, I definitely think he's back to pretty much somewhere where he was last year. And I'd like to think he's going forward.
Gee, it was bright, Michael. Great vision there from Emily Morgan from HRNZ. Appreciate her coming out and getting that footage for us. But it was nice to see him back to something like his best. He felt good, clearly running to the line. I'm looking forward to him going to Methven. Just on that, Michael, I spoke to Ricky May, who would know more about the weather out there than most, being a farmer. He suggested to me there is a fair bit of rain and some snow, but it clears by Thursday, and Sunday is actually a high of about 18 or 19. And when you see the field for the Methven Cup, 16 going to the post, Spankham, Self-Assured, South Coast Arden, Cranbourne, this would be as deeper Methven Cup as I've seen.
And Kango,
And
who's
Kango,
going to add a new form line to the race. I love the idea that they head to the grass, and it's been quite a successful way to get there for horses like Cruz Bromac. Self-Assured raced on the grass before he won the Cup. Obviously Flashing Red raced on the grass before he won the Cup, and a few others. So I still think Self-Assured's the horse to beat in every race until there's not a reason he's the horse to beat in every race anymore. And he was really good last week, and he'll improve probably more than most, but South Coast Arden absolutely should love the grass. It's turning into a really intriguing New Zealand Cup, Greg, because Copy That last week had the issue, and we'll talk about that later, and Rock and Roll Do. There's a lot of things happening here, and what it's turning into is a cup where, in recent years, Mark and Natalie's horses, or Mark and Hayden's, have been able to intimidate the other horses. When they've gone looking for the lead, they've been too good and they'll get the lead. Apart from last year when Copy That did what BD Joe did, and that was just snuck in front of Mark's horse enough. But all of a sudden we have horses like Copy That, who's potentially coming back, like Rock and Roll Do, and now like South Coast Arden, who aren't going to be scared of the All-Stars. They're not going to be automatic hand-up horses, and maybe either's BD Joe. And that's something we haven't had for a long, long time in harness racing in this country, is 3 or 4 or 5 horses who are happy to park a Self-Assured or park a Spankham and leave them out there. And that's really intriguing, Greg. It's at a cool place right now with a lot more things to come into the race. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. The field this week for Methven, adding Cranbourne, who I still think is a factor in the Cup, is fantastic, Greg. So I'm really looking forward to this. Here's the Cup last year, which he did win, Cranbourne. You look at this field, Greg, it's good. This year's field, I rate about 5 lengths stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. And the most unique part about this, Michael, is it's not at Methven. It was the Methven Cup at Geraldine. If you remember, they had that big windstorm and lost half the inside track onto the grass. So that was in beating steel, the show. So an excellent performance from Cranbourne. Missed away last time. Actually spoke to Brent Mangos about that. He said, well, South Coast Arden was playing up a wee bit at the start and probably put Cranbourne off. There was plenty of room there for him to step away. Hopeful that he does step this week because he had trialled nicely, and I spoke to co-trainer Brent White. He thought he was bang on for that first up run and obviously didn't get that opportunity. So an excellent contest, the Alabar Methven Cup with that big full field. It goes on Sunday over the 3,000 metres, and they're underway at about 16 minutes to 4 o'clock. So looking forward to that one. The other of the feature paces this week, of course, is on Friday night. It's the Kerry Hoggard Memorial, the Holmes DG. And whilst it's not a big field, we get to see this horse again, Michael, Old Town Road. Excellent at the trial. Spoke to Zach Butcher at Addington post this, and he said, geez, a good horse. He's very, very fast. 56.3, 25.9. We also get to see the return of Hot and Treacherous.
So both of them have trialled in the last 2 weeks. This is last Friday at Pukekohe, and Zach summed it up. He's just fast. His legs move fast, which is really handy if you're a racehorse. He's just quick, and I think he'll have superior fitness with 2 starts back this campaign over Hot and Treacherous, who the week before was also given a searching run and beat Bolt for Brilliance, who's back on Friday night. I think he'll be too fit and maybe too quick for Hot and Treacherous. So yes, I think Old Town Road, who's favourite for the race in the early markets, will beat Hot and Treacherous, but there's probably not an enormous amount between them, and Hot and Treacherous more proven, and as you mentioned with the South Coast Arden, Greg, has had that year of hardening in open grade, but I'm not sure that'll be enough this week. Good little race. Old Town Road, the indications are no New Zealand Cup for him. Hot and treacherous Greg, I think, will know a lot more about his chances of heading to Ashburton and to the Cup after this Friday. But good to see him back because he's proven at that level and he adds to that group of horses, Greg, who we start to say this could be one of the deepest New Zealand Cups of this century.
Yeah, and I think it's reflected, Michael, in the market. So let's have a look at that now. Self-assured, $2.80. Copy that, $7. Rock and Roll Do, also $7. BD Joe into 8. Akuta I want to talk to you about in a moment, also 8. South Coast Arden now $8. Alta Wise Guy and Spankham at 13. Let's go to Akuta, Michael. Last week, we won't have a look at the vision because we all know what happened. Republican Party got the front, sprinted home in 54.9. Akuta, well, he laboured the last 100 metres, so the All-Stars took blood. And I spoke to Mark Purdon late yesterday afternoon. He said the blood tests have come back absolutely fine. I've had this discussion with Mark before about this time of year, change of season, but more growth in the grass and the paddocks. He felt that he wasn't screwed down as much as he would have liked. In saying that, sectionally, Michael, he couldn't have won that race. It was a brilliant front-running drive by Blair Orange on Republican Party. And yes, we're disappointed Akuta got beaten because he was $1.20 and we expect him to win every time. But it just shows you if you're just off your game a little bit, there's enough quality around that you're not just going to line up and win. I don't know that it's changed whether he starts in the Cup much at all. I still think he's probably 50-50. He goes to the Flying Stakes next week, which is a $100,000 race, and then to the Ashburton Flying Stakes, and that's still D-Day.
It is, but the bottom line is he wins by 3 lengths last week and he is a lot closer to going to the Cup than getting beaten. He wins by 3 lengths last week. He goes to Ashburton, finishes 4th. You probably go to the Cup.
Yep.
He goes to Ashburton, finishes 4th now. You don't go to the Cup. I wouldn't send him to the Cup. But Mark Purdon knows about 50 times more about this than I do. So his decision is the ultimate one and he's the right person to make it. I don't think he needs to go to the Cup. I think it's a deep enough Cup that I'm not sure there's many places he can win it from. I know about the sectionals last week, and there was a lot of hubbub about that and about the track being faster on the inside. I'll put that to 3 or 4 drivers. They said, no, the track was fair. It's just that we haven't seen the really good horses racing for a long time. And when the really good horses come back, and I say this every morning, New Zealand Cup Day, pay attention, punters. You can't make any ground. You just can't because they go so fast. And the one thing I would say with Akuta is I'm never disappointed when a good horse gets beaten in a quick last half, but he didn't run past any horses, and that is an issue. Now, if you put Self-Assured where Akuta was last week, would he not have run past those other horses? Well, of course he would have run past a couple of them. Absolutely certain. That's just a fact of life.
Yeah.
He's only run out of the money once in his
But I've
career,
just told you what Mark said, though. He said he believes he was a little bit fat and he'll be cutting his feed back and I'm expecting to see a different version next week.
I agree, but Self-Assured's been eating the same grass, and he still would have run past those horses. What I saw last,
he's a bigger, stockier horse, Akuta.
Yep. What I saw last week, I think a lot of us can make excuses for Akuta because we love him so much and think he's such a good horse, but he still isn't those horses yet, and he will be one day, and he might be in 6 months. He might win the race, but I'm not sure he needs to be heading to a New Zealand Cup in a real big hurry when he can win a derby. Mark's the right man to make that decision, and to be perfectly honest, he's got the Flying Stakes next week to give us an indication. I'm surprised the Bloods came back with no issues because I thought some of their team raced under.
A little bit of muscle tie-up, just a little bit of higher count there, but he said not enough to, be concerned about. So.
What I was more interested in was talking to some of the drivers about the track, because when it's that hot on the inside, people think it is maybe an indifference, but it's incredibly hard to make a harness racing track bias unless you grade.
Yeah, I don't go along with that. I've heard that a few times about Addington. Oh, it's a leader bias, mate. Go to any track, Melton, Menangle, any of those. When they're running home in sub 55, you can't make ground. Doesn't matter who you are.
Well, it depends how good the horses are. In winter, when the horses aren't very good, it doesn't matter because the better horses will come to the fore. But when the good horses get back, like Cup Day, and you're running 54s and those sort of times, you just can't make any ground.
No.
So I'm not worried about the track because I actually rang drivers and said, what do you think? And they all said no. I take Mark's point on board about the grass thing, but then again, everybody's been eating the same grass. Every horse in Canterbury is eating the same grass. So it's a really interesting time for Akuta. I'm not by no means slagging him. But we're going to need to see a hell of a lot more in 9 days' time if we're going to consider him a cup winning chance. And it did go to prove the hype on the horse got too high, because he was at one stage like a $4 second favourite for the New Zealand Cup.
Yep.
And that was never justified.
No, hard to argue with that. I tell you, there's been some good things that TAB are doing, Michael, including Future Proof, which is an outstanding addition to their arsenal. If you like, you place a futures winning bet and get a refund of up to $50. There's a bonus bet if your horse doesn't line up. And this is the one I've been loving, Michael, the no deductions this spring, and it goes right through to the end of Cup Week. So whatever odds you back the horse at, and it doesn't have to just be in your phone account, it's over the counter, it's on one of the SST machines. They're really having a crack at trying to retain some New Zealand punters and giving you some great innovations, including all of the bet types they have around all of the races now.
Future Proof's crucial because you can back Rock and Roll Do in Future Proof and he doesn't turn up, you get your money back, which is cool. The other one, no deductions, isn't going to be for spring. It'll be permanent. I have absolutely no doubts about that. In fact, I think that's why they bought it in, Greg.
Okay.
It got a lot of cop from people saying, oh, percentages and this will happen. But the bottom line is this. It comes down to one thing. You've still got to back the winner.
Yep.
And most people don't back the winner in most races. If the average harness racing dividend's $3, that means 70% of people who bet into that race lost. And this is the way they can secure money back from going offshore. And at the moment, if you bet on harness racing in this country and you're not betting with the TAB, you don't know what you're doing. I say that to someone who's been fired by the TAB twice. I'm not a TAB man at all. I'm here to work for the punters. But these two things, along with the punter's promise where you're getting $2,000 guaranteed bet to win, you can't get that anywhere else in the world.
No.
I know that because I've tried everywhere that they bet.
I know you have.
And at the moment, a couple of years ago, I feared for the TAB in this country. I feared they knew what they were doing. This, led by Mike Todd and giving the freedom to his betting team to implement these changes, is the single biggest year of development in TAB history in the country by a mile. The reason it's important is at some stage, the Minister for Racing is going to have to go to Cabinet and say, we want to close the borders. And we want to take Bet365 and Sportsbet and Entain Ladbrokes out of play. That's going to happen this year, and they're going to try and implement that in the next 12 months. I'm not saying it'll get through, because governments tend to be funny about monopolies, but a lot of people don't realise, in Australia, you can't bet offshore. If you live in Australia, you can't bet with the New Zealand TAB, or anywhere else. And it could potentially bring 50 to maybe $100 million back to the industry in this country. It's an awful lot of money. It's one of the single biggest moments in the history of racing in this country, is when Cabinet moves or doesn't move on closing the borders for gambling. People would say that, I'll sum this up as best I can, Greg, because we've got lots of other things to talk about. People will say, well, that's taking away my choice. I'll tell you something you probably don't know. If you are betting with a bookmaker offshore, you are losing. Because they don't let you bet if you win. I can't bet with any bookmaker offshore to win anything which is remotely substantial. There's one place I can, but that most people aren't going to bet with that. If you're betting with offshore bookmakers and you're winning, they will shut your account down or bid you on ridiculous minimums. I can get $1.30 on with some bookies. So if you think you're betting offshore and making money, you're not.
No.
A not long conversation for another time, but this is a pivotal time for the TAB, and those changes they have implemented under Mike's management have been massive, and massive wins for the punters here.
Yep. Well, congratulations to them. That's why I wanted to highlight it on the show. Also wanted to highlight the Trainers Premiership, because things are starting to hot up there a wee bit. Steve and Amanda Telfer still well in front, 11 ahead of Robert and Jenna Dunn. Mark Purdon and Hayden Cullen starting to make some ground. Those three appear to be in a decent fight here. So Steve and Amanda still well clear, and the next month I think might dictate this, and the odds are shifting around a little bit. At one point the All-Stars team got out to about $11. They're now back into around $3.40. Time for us to take a quick break here on your box seat. On the other side, we've got plenty of preview for you as things start to hot up less than 5 weeks out from IRT New Zealand Trotting Cup Week. Welcome back into your box seat. Yes, brought to you by our stable of sponsors. A big thank you to them once again. Blue September is over, and what an effort to raise over $50,000. Dominated on the track driving-wise by Zach Butcher. And here it is, Johnny Cox there on the right-hand side. He was part of the team out there driving along with Corbin Newman. And, yep, well done to them, 50,000. It's a great cause, and a lot of work went in behind it from the HRNZ team. So congratulations to them for that. Brecon Farms feature trotting performances. We want to go back to Addington and have a look at this horse, Smokin' Bandar. In the trail, Craig Ferguson grabbed a double. Michael, he's doing some really good things in the training and driving ranks. And Smokin' Bandar's record at Addington now. He's won 5 from 11 and 9 races in total. And he's moving up the order in terms of making his way into the Renwick Farms Dominion.
Yeah, how exciting for Craig, and how exciting for the Deep South. I mean, there'd be nothing worse than if early in the season all these horses have got panelled by Muscle Mountain and Sunday Sun. And you go, well, that's great, but there's only 3 chances in the Dominion. Maybe there's not. Maybe there's more. I'm really thrilled for Craig. He won the last race on the card too. He's got a good association with Regan Todd, where he goes and bases his horses in Canterbury, and that's really crucial if you're based in the south. But I'm thrilled for him. A talented young guy who's got himself a very good horse, Gregan. Who's to say he's not as good as Amarito's son, who won the Dominion 5 years ago and upset everybody. It's a bloody tough year to be an open class trotter, but he's a lot closer than I thought he was, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Muscle Mountain taking no part and Sunday Sun galloping, so we get to see Bolt for Brilliance. We'll talk about that very shortly. And yeah, Craig's got another smarty in Street Art who goes to Addington on Thursday night. Looking at the market, so Bolt for Brilliance and Sunday Sun both at $270. Then you got Muscle Mountain $550 out to about $17 odd for both Five Wise Men and Smokin' Bandar. The return of Bolt for Brilliance, Michael. I know later in the show you're going to make him your best bet. We showed his trial last week. He looks to have come back and fine fair to win. The back mark doesn't look to be too big an impost for him this week.
Well, not really, Greg, when you consider there's only a couple off the front, and the horses who are off 20, like Invictus, they're not, they're only getting 10 metres from Bolt for Brilliance, and Bolt for Brilliance is clearly better than Invictus by more than 10 metres. He can be a funny horse early in his campaigns. He can just muck around, and he can be on and off the speed and make himself a difficult drive for Tony. What I liked at the workouts behind Hot and Treacherous was he was very dialed in. Trotted very squarely, but he was dialed in. He wasn't falling off the back of horses and mucking around. I'm not certain that's going to be the case this week. But with the field being broken up to frontline 10-20, he'll be part of the field very quickly, and that's important for him, because when he's chasing, he can muck around a bit. So I think he'll win. I think he comes in beautifully with the maximum back mark of 30 metres. And I think his Rowe Cup win back in May said to us that he's closed the gap on Sunday Sun. Whether he's closed it all the way, I'm not sure. But he's closed it a fair bit. So he's in for a hell of a campaign. I'm just not sure where it's going to end up. We're thinking 2 runs here, Kaikoura, into Cup Week. Then the question is, does the plane or planes needed to get him and a whole bunch of other horses like South Coast Arden from Christchurch back to Auckland in time to catch the plane to Melbourne?
Yeah.
So there's lots of things in play there. But for this Friday, I think the composition of the field suits him beautifully. He'll be on the back of the field after not too long, and I think he'll win.
All right, so he goes round in race 8, the 10-race card there out of Alexandra Park, underway at 14 minutes to 6 o'clock on Friday night. Speaking of Brecon Farms, unbeaten she is, High Energy. This is her sitting parked in the hands of Johnny Cox. Really good run from this daughter of Father Patrick out of Highgate, of course. Second at the line, Kiss and Run. You're going to kiss me or not, the family, and really charging to the line. That's Monarch Prince and the Coaster Hare colours on the inside. And Tektronic, who keeps starting off the unruly, but might end up being one of the better in this grade because just keeps going super races. But High Energy's bred to be good, and she is, Michael.
Yeah, one of the best breeds in New Zealand, that Highgate breed from the Brecon Farms. Not awfully big, there's not a lot of her. When you look at her there, she wouldn't weigh much more than 450 kgs, one would think, maybe even less at this stage of her career, but she can trot. So she's a huge factor in all of these races because she had no favours there, Greg. Really like Tetronic as well. I think he's a good horse. And it reminds me a little bit of Out of My Way, who was an immature 2-year-old into 3-year-old who then developed and won a couple of sales series paces, trots. So, yeah, I think Tetronic's a good horse for Paul heading forward, but, yeah, High Energy just looks a total pro.
Yep, certainly, yeah, it does. That was a good day down there at Timaru. Of course, they had those spring reward races, and that was shared around by a number of connections. Let's go across the ditch with Garrards, and it is, of course, Victoria Cup, Derby and Oaks week, so it's a massive week across there. Let's have a look at Torrid Saint winning last week in the Smoking Up Sprint. In front, Better Eclipse getting to the outside for Greg Sugars. Copy that in the park position, 888. Yeah, a pretty smart animal, Torrid Saint, and I wasn't surprised by this win at all, Michael.
Loves the short trips, loves leading. That's his total go in life. He's drawn the outside of the front line of the Victoria Cup this week, so he's in a world of pain because it's a good Victoria Cup. Best run of the race there, I thought the horse flashing down the outside. Better Eclipse for Greg Sugars. He gets barrier 1 in the Victoria Cup. Now, most importantly, the Victoria Cup is 22.40. It's not 27.60 like the Oaks and the Derby. He's got barrier 1 and Expensive Ego's got barrier 2, which means anything that can come around them and beat them is going to need to be awfully, awfully good. I think they'll end up close enough to lead trail or something like that. Copy That's drawn on the back of Better Eclipse. Now, Copy That was found to have had a grade 2 bleed after that race. That's not overly serious. I spoke to Nathan Jack, who drove the horse. He said, I didn't even know. But he was disappointed in the last 100 initially. Then, of course, the bleed would say why that happened. He's going to be checked on Thursday by Ray Green to see whether he starts on Saturday night. But the indications are pretty good that it's not a massive deal. So he'll have to report to the vets. Then he was likely to start behind Better Eclipse at the start, which is really crucial. At worst, 3 deep on the marker pegs. Still a pivotal race for him, Greg, for his New Zealand Cup campaign. If he bleeds again or underperforms, it starts to become doubtful. If he excels, then we move on. Rock and Roll Do's in the race. He's drawn barrier 3 or 4, and he's going to need to come around some horses because he's not a gate speed horse in the last lap of the race, and that's going to be really hard to do. The marker pegs in Victoria Cups, Greg, for a long time have been completely dominant. Yeah. So, really intriguing race from a New Zealand Cup point of view, from an Inter-Dominion point of view. On with Better Eclipse, but without any great conviction.
Yeah, I love what I saw from him. He won the Sunshine Sprint race with great conviction there in the Rising Sun as well prior to that, and comes up with barrier 1. Let's have a look at the market for it. And Better Eclipse has come up $3.60. Expensive Ego drawn right beside him, $2.50 for Team McCarthy. Rock and Roll Do $5.50, as is the price for Honolulu Bay. Copy That $16 and $4. There'll be plenty. A little bit keen on that, one would think. In one though, Michael, if you're having one bet, what would it be in the Victoria Cup? You're thinking Better Eclipse?
Just Better Eclipse. If it was at Menangle, Expensive Ego every day of the week. Yep. But Better Eclipse because the marker pegs are awesome, and I can't see him being in a spot where he doesn't run 1 or 2. And Greg, let's not forget with the tab, you can back them to run first or second. Doesn't have to be first or third. Yep. First or second. I cannot see him missing top 2.
No, well, speaking of Menangle, let's go and have a look at I Cast No Shadow. Now, he tried to get in the Victoria Cup. That's him in front. Of course, Jason Grimson combining with Cam Hart here. He just kept running, Michael. 150.5. He's definitely improved this horse. He's going to need to come here nice and early if he wants to make the Cup, though, because he's got a lot of ground to make up rankings-wise.
He'd be a great addition to the Cup. Some people would watch this and go, oh, what's he beating? But then again, we thought the same about Majestic Cruiser, and he came across from Australia and did a super job. Horse who's very fit, very dialed in, and he's now a factor in any race he turns up in. Majestic Cruiser, by the way, is likely to trial next week from a standing start, and that would give them the option to come to the New Zealand Cup because he would be qualified from a standing start if he behaves himself. I don't think they'll come, but I think if they bring 1, they want to bring 2. Yep. So you're right, they're going to need to win some races to get in with I Cast No Shadow, but he's a horse very much on the improve and a horse we should be watching for those type of races I'm less than 50-50 they make it to Addington.
All right, I mentioned before it's a multiple Group 1 night. The Derby, but a Kiwi success too. Major Perry came from a long way back. Overall time was faster than heat number 2, but the last quarter was only 29.5. There he is with Scott Phelan down the outside picking up a flying rip who comes out of that Queensland Carnival, and a few of those are bouncing through that into these types of races. And yeah, I thought Major Perry was excellent, 55.7 mile rate overall. Michael, Scott Phelan wouldn't have driven a whole lot of times in Australia. I'll get you to talk about that in a moment, because here's a clash. Captain Ravishing and Leap to Fame, the Queensland and New South Wales Derby winner, going head to head here.
The winner was staggering in this race. We'll get back to Major Perry because he deserves his time in the sun, but the winner was unbelievably good. Leap to Fame is very good. Probably as good as any of our 3-year-olds, maybe with the exception of Akuta. I love Akuta. I think he's a wonderful horse. He couldn't have done that. He could not have done what Captain Ravishing did. If they went home in 55-1, you would say, gee, that's a big win. They went home in 53-1. 53-1. Sitting parked and basically dorking himself around. He was gawking and looking for other horses. He didn't know what he was doing, Captain Ravishing. If you haven't seen him, his previous 2 wins, he's just panelled good fields. I'm not saying he'll be a superstar for the next 5 years, but he is right dialed in at the moment. He's drawn the second line on the Derby on Saturday night, but it probably won't matter because Leap to Fame led there. He sat parked outside him and beat him, Greg, over 27.60. It's exactly the same routine this week. I reckon they'll go quicker, and I reckon Leap to Fame will be better, but that's as good as I've seen a 3-year-old, with the caveat, of course, that they are technically 4 and would have been 4 in the old days. So Lazarus would have done that at the stage of his 3-year-old career because he won a New Zealand Cup by 10 lengths when he was 4. But that's as good as I've seen a 3-year-old, for what it's worth, go at Melton.
Yep. I think he'll need to go as good again. He's $1.70 for the Derby, $2.80 for Leap to Fame, who, you're right, he'll definitely improve. He had to cop the float trip up there, and I think if he finds the front, it's going to be one heck of a battle. You've got Major Perry and gate number 6. It's going to be hard work for him from out there.
Just on Major Perry, wonderful drive by Scott Phelan.
Yeah,
now,
really
Scott, of
good.
course, spent time living in Australia.
Yes.
Scott moved to Australia, and that doesn't do you any harm, having that experience. But Scott's been doing a massive job while Barry's been slightly sidelined for the team a couple of months ago. And Scott's driving's underrated because Zach Butcher does so much of their number 1 driving. But that was a beautiful drive, and he's such a huge part of their team. So I'm really thrilled for both of them because Major Perry's been a progressive horse. He's just unfortunately turned up in an incredibly deep Derby. Their Derby is at least as deep as our Derby's going to be at Addington. And New Zealanders hate that sort of stuff. They grimace and, what you don't understand. But it's bloody deep.
It's deep. Yep.
And Captain Ravishing's as good as Akuta at the moment. I'm not saying he's as good as Akuta in a year's time. But these are good horses, and I'm looking forward to getting to Melton on Saturday night and seeing how they go because Rip and plenty of others in this field.
Simply Sam's got barrier 1. He'll get his chance to run top 4. Yep.
And exactly what he'll do. He'll get his chance to run top 4. Looking forward to seeing how all this pans out because these are the horses we're going to see next year, potentially, against Akuta even in February in the Chariots of Fire.
Yeah, and Queen Elida goes round in the Group 1. You've also got Ladies in Red returning in the Make Mine Cullen. So Saturday night at Melton is going to be an exceptional one. What about the Oaks? Are you with Encryptor?
I think the best horse in the race is the New South Wales Oaks winner in Just Hope. I think she's the best horse, but she's drawn slightly wide. I don't mind that because I think she can probably go back and over 27.60, most of these will have their eyeballs hanging out of their heads. I would back her because I think she'll cop it better than most of them, but there's 3 or 4 from the Emma Stewart stable there, and that gives them weight of numbers, which is often quite handy.
Yeah, it certainly is. All right, that's a good look across the ditch with Garrards. When we come back, we've got some excellent races to preview out of Addington on a Thursday night where we have multiple qualifying races for Cup Day at Addington. We'll take a short break, come back, do that, find some competitions for you to enter as well. You're in your home straight in your box seat. Let's go back to Cambridge. The Bay of Plenty Waikato Harness Racing Club had a heat for the Dunstan Sire Stakes Fillies Championship. And here is a terrific home stretch battle. Michael, Advance Party gets to the outside, Zachary Butcher in the Barry Purdon colours, and Scott Phelan, of course. And here's the Woodlands colours. Karlua Flyby. Man, her last 150 was quick.
Two very good fillies here. Really good horses, and they will give Millwood Nike something to think about at some stage if they can get on the markers when she's coming wide. Good crop this, Greg. Good reason for why this later two-year-old season is working. Love this horse, heaps of speed. Great to see the Woodlands syndicates going again. Our good friend Matt Smith from the TRB's involved in that. Matt, good to see you with a nice horse again, mate. But she's good. I think Advance Party might be a length better.
Yeah, well, I spoke to Zach about that. It was interesting. There was a conversation between Zach and Tim, and Zach said, you know what, I reckon that I couldn't have done anything more to beat you there. I thought I had you at about the 150, but she was just too quick. Looking at this market, Millwood Nike's the benchmark. She's $1.50. Then you get out to $7 for Advance Party and Karlua Flyby, and Love Struck and a couple of others are in the mix too, Michael. But yeah, the $1.50 is really short because these two are no slouches, as you quite rightly point out.
Well, and also in these big races, you're always a 1/3 chance of drawing the second line.
Yep.
So 1 in 3, you're going to draw the second line. Millwood Nike, maybe it won't matter, but yeah, some really good fun racing coming up with this crop. But I'm not saying I don't love Karlua Flyby, but I love the second horse, Advance Party, and it's my fault I got beat. I made it better of the week last week. So. Sorry, Advance Party.
We've got the second heat at Addington on Thursday night. Arden by the Seaside's in there, Treacherous Gal's in there. We'll have a look at that very shortly. They'll be the two hardest to beat there. Here is the next heat in the Neverly R Series, and Queen of Diamonds got the business done down south at Oamaru, winning heat number 3 in front there. It was a pretty good performance from her. She comes inside second row this week, Michael, so it won't be easy. Obsession in second. Monaco Grace charging home comes up with a much better barrier draw this week, so it's intriguing with Queen of Diamonds inside second row. Won't make it easy for her, but a good contest it will be. That Neverly R heat, race number 3 it is in series number 44 of this wonderful concept. Let's now have a look at the trotters, and Sonny Louis getting through on the inside of Hot to Trot here. I've always had a bit of time for Sonny Louis, Michael. This was his fresh up performance. Hot to Trot is a pretty handy horse in his own right, and this should be a really good battle on Thursday night.
Well, it won't be if Highgrove turns up in the right form, because he'll smash them.
Wanted to get to him.
He's just a big old filthy superstar is Highgrove, but he's also a little bit nutty. He reminds me a little bit of David Moss. He's just cool. I love him, and I don't trust him an inch. But if he turns up, he'll be too good for these, Greg. These are good horses.
What about this race, Michael? It's named the Alias Armbro. So I'm embracing this sort of thing that Brian Rabbit and Darren Williams are doing, putting race names to former stars. Of course, he was good enough to win a Dominion, and I think he was the sire of William D, who also won a Dominion too. So, yeah, I like the fact that we're embracing our history.
Well, let's be honest, Greg. On a Thursday night, the general punters don't care if it's called Bob's Burger Bar. So, yeah, name them after good horses. Remember those horses, and that gives people watching these races or owning these horses a chance that in 20 years that'll be their horse, which is such a thrill for them. So I reckon respecting, particularly at Addington, which is an historic track and the iconic track, it's important to remember those horses. We've also got the Holmes DG this week at Alexandra Park. But these are good horses, and I love a good trotter. Yep. But Highgrove's just better than all these if he turns up, and that's an if. But I spoke to John Dunn last week. He was happy with Highgrove. He is the absolute favourite for any race he wants to race in. Just on this crop, I spoke to Paul Nairn about Masterly recently. Masterly, who's pretty darn good, has had a setback, and he will catch up, but he's going to be coming off the back foot against a pretty fit and good crop of trotters heading towards the Derby down.
Yeah, Mystic Max returns in that race too for Michael Purdon, so looking forward to seeing it. Dunstan Horse Feeds, I mentioned that Sire Stakes heat. Let's have a look at Arden by the Seaside in front. Treacherous Gal, the one I want to talk about, Michael. She storms home, fresh up on this occasion. I think if she only performs like this again against Arden by the Seaside, they've drawn right alongside each other. She'll be hard to beat in this heat.
She was massive down the outside, and we're starting to see some real equine firepower come through from the stock of Captain Treacherous. And the general idea in North America is the fillies are better than the colts. That race will come down to who stays in front of who at the start. They're drawn alongside each other. It's crucial. Here's the unbeaten Don't Stop Dreaming. Now, we know how good it was, or he was, at the front end of the year, Greg. Had a little setback, which we alluded to recently on the show, and told punters, be careful with this horse. But it's trial well last week at Ashburton. It heads to a race tomorrow night where it's perfectly drawn. Couldn't have worked out better for it, Greg. Last thing it wanted a week out from the Harness Million race, the Flyings, Harness Million. Last thing it wanted was to draw second line, have to come sit park, get a headache into next week. Isn't going to do that.
No.
Strong barrier 3 probably gets an easy kill, and it'll need it because waiting next week will be Merlin. So all those concerns start to dissipate very quickly with Don't Stop Dreaming. Whether that's the case tomorrow night, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, we saw his gate speed at Addington when he led comfortably earlier in the year, and of course from barrier 3 with Ultra Meteor drawn the outside of the second row too. It's certainly going to make it a little bit easier, particularly if he can find the front. We've got some milestones, Michael. Wayne Fawcett got win number 1. Congratulations to him with Pentatonics. We've seen him around the game for a long time.
Yeah, and obviously trained alongside his parents for a long time
yes.
too, so I'm sure he's actually trained more winners than this, to be perfectly honest, but this is his first official training win, so good on you, Wayne. A guy who knows an awful lot about harness racing, smart family, they always have been. And it won't be his last winner, that's for sure.
No.
It wasn't really even his first, to be honest, but
no,
it was officially. No. It was officially, so good on him.
As an individual, of course, training alongside Alan, what about this? From 1 win as an individual to 700 driving wins for Gavin Smith. This was aboard Star Magic at the Far Lap. Storms home down the outside. He's always been a good driver, Gavin. 700 wins is no mean feat. Of course, he's had Group 1 success. He trained. Great things happened to win a New Zealand trotting free-for-all. He won a Taylor Mile with Second Wind about 10 or 12 years ago. And he won a Jules with Sunny Ruby. So congratulations to him. He's relocated out as part of the Davey and Catherine Butt set up there at Woodend Beach. So there's a few changes happening in his training regime, Michael. But driving-wise, 700 wins. Congratulations to him.
Yeah, and one of those younger drivers when he came through who wasn't scared to be aggressive. As you mentioned, he's going to split the team, some to the beach and some to the normal setup, which is great. Really intriguing for him. He's going to try and build the team up to 30 horses. Clearly he can train. He's a smart guy. He thinks about his craft a lot. So well done to Gavin, because as you said, 700 is a big number, and he hasn't had a lot of really expensive yearling horses to play with. So it's a lot harder when you don't have those sort of horses to work with. So yeah, he's at an intriguing time in his career because he is going to try to find beach horses as well. So you can do a lot worse, Greg, than have a horse with him.
All right, let's have a look at where we're going to go around the country this week, harness racing wise. Addington, yeah, really good program there. Good numbers. 4:35 kicks things off with an amateur drivers race, and they've got the 11 races there. The Hara de Trotters Southland Trotting Oaks, including Hidden Talent amongst others. 2:49 the start time there on Friday afternoon, and the Kerry Hoggard Memorial, the Holmes DG, the feature on the 10 race card out of Alexandra Park, 5:46. And Neffin have actually ended up with 12 races, so they do kick things off at 12:01, starting at that same time. But they've got massive fields there. The weather watch is out. We're pretty confident by Thursday it'll be gone, so things will dry out. And I spoke to Ricky about the track too. He said couldn't be happier with it. It is certainly outstanding at the moment. Right, we've got a couple of competitions for you to partake in. Last week we got a number of entries for the Ashburton, their big mega day on Labor Day Monday, of course. Here is the competition for you to enter. 4 tickets to the Ashburton Lounge, including F&B on Magic Monday. Yes, Labor Day Monday. The competition over the next couple of weeks, then it'll be closed. boxseatnz@gmail.com. Here's your question. Go to HRNZ. You'll be able to look it up. Major races, Ashburton Flying Stakes. How many in the last 10 years have gone on from winning this race to win the IRT New Zealand Cup? It doesn't have to be in the same year, so it's not a trick question for you. boxseatnz@gmail.com. Make sure you enter that. And a big thank you to the Ashburton Trotting Club. Once we complete that competition, we're going to have another one for Kaikoura for their big Alabar Kaikoura Cup Day. But Harness Link have got in behind this show, and they have a magic competition at the moment. This is how you enter, Michael. It's to win a $10,000 harness racing trip of a lifetime. Look at some of those places you could end up. I'll ask you, Michael, where you'd like to go very shortly. Go to Harness Link. If you become a subscriber to their Harness Link Insider, it's just a whole lot of information that'll get sent out to you weekly. You could be going to the Litlopat, the Little Brown Jug, the Hambletonian, the Miracle Mile. I've been to the Gold Cup and Saucer, Michael, Charlottetown in Canada, and of course you could get to the New Zealand Cup. It's a $10,000 trip. If you were to win it, Michael, where would you go?
Easy Greek, pre-Domarique. Problem is it's actually Karaka Million weekend, so I'm usually busy that weekend, but I'd love to go to the pre. I haven't been to the pre-Domarique, I haven't been to the Cup and Saucer. I've been to Elite Loppet 8 times, I think. Little Brown Jug I've been to, Hambos I've been to, a lot of Miracle Miles. Went to my first Miracle Mile in 1991 when Christopher Vance won it. I've been to a couple of New Zealand Cups too. I'd love to go to the pre-Domarique. I probably never will.
Great competition though.
Oh, awesome competition. I tell you what also is cool, this is really funky. Super Stable is back with Harness Racing New Zealand, so go to IRT NZ because I'm not going to explain it to you because it's pretty complicated stuff. You just need to pick your best 12 horses. You be as smart as anybody else and you can beat Greg and I or hundreds of other people. You can win a $20,000 spa pool.
Yes.
I have an apartment, so I can't win it because I've got nowhere to put it, but I'm sure plenty of people, other people do. It's a massive competition.
Yeah, it is. Huge.
So Super Stable's back, and it doesn't cost you anything.
No.
So go to hrnz.co.nz, you'll find it, and have a crack, but get in and then
And they've got a couple of windows for trading.
It's cool.
It's really cool.
It's fun. It's fun, and we should have a box seat entry. We should enter one together, because if you win, you can get another spa pool because you've probably got 2 or 3. But the kids are getting sick of you, so they'll want their own one soon. Whereas I have an apartment, so it's no good to me.
No, right. I think we'll do that. Once we've completed filming the show, Michael, we'll come up with what we want to do.
Not today. I'm busy today. We'll do it tomorrow.
Okay then. Rightio. Yeah, you're always busy. Best bets, Michael. Mine won. Our good friend Graham won from Hand Milking.
I let the team down again.
You did.
Actually,
anyway, congratulations to Graham too, because he got Merlin and Dekalua flyby, which means he's positive at this stage of proceedings plus 180, and we're minus 200. So where are you going this week?
I'll go for Bolt for Brilliance because we're just trying to win money. We're not trying to get big divvies. We're trying to win money early doors for this great cause, and then we'll try and get some divvies later on. But I love this horse.
Yep.
I think he's in for a massive next 12 months, and I think 30 metres isn't enough to stop him at Alexandra Park.
Yeah, well, I'll go Artie by the Hill. I think it'll win race 10 at Addington on Thursday night, so we'll multi them up. Graham's gone with Rapunga Lad into Hidden Talent. That race I mentioned, the Oaks down there, and Jason Broad's come through, and he reckons Rapunga Lad will win as well, so it's a pretty talented horse. There's so much going on, Michael. From Thursday through to Sunday, there's something for everyone in harness racing, particularly with it being Victoria Cup night on Saturday night.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Melton and try and find out who's coming, who's not coming, what's actually going on. I'm also going to ask some of the trainers there what they make of the race and what they're going to do heading forward over the summer. So we'll get some Melton info. Just quickly, Greg, New Zealand Cup Day, how are sales going for that? And I know there's people who watch this show who, like me, leave things to the last minute and they, I'm going to fly to Christchurch and have a great time and go to Cup Week. But if they're going to do that, you might as well just book your tickets.
Very few corporate tickets left, and the lawn tickets and GA tickets are going out very, very quickly. It's going to be hugely popular, Michael. We haven't had a crowd for a couple of years, and people are going, right, I need to dress up outside of going to a wedding. Where do you get to dress up and enjoy yourself on a day? Well, IRT New Zealand Cup Day is exactly that. We should have an update too on the trot slot race from Cambridge in the next week or 10 days, so we'll include that in next week's show, and we'd love to get all that information from you out of Victoria next week, Michael. Really appreciate your time, and I'll see you in 7 days. The Box Seat brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Harness Link for your worldwide harness coverage. New Zealand Bloodstock Standardbred, where winning begins. Brecon Farms. Stonewall Stud. IRT, it's your horse and our passion. Australasian-wide Garrard's Horse and Hound. Renwick Farms. Lincoln Farms, Harness Racing New Zealand and the clubs Addington, Ashburton, Alexandra Park and Cambridge.